You know, I still can't quite believe this is my life, that this actually happened. Just tell me honestly, was I the villain here? Was I the cold-hearted monster my sister claims I am? Or was I justified in throwing her 2 small children and all their bags back into a taxi less than 5 minutes after they arrived on my doorstep? I really need to know, because the family drama that has erupted since then has been biblical, and I'm genuinely asking you, the moment you hear this whole mess, tell me if you would have done the exact same thing. This entire nightmare started, as most nightmares do, with a perfectly reasonable request that turned into an absolute, unbelievable demand. Let me take you back to the beginning, before the taxi, before the meltdown, before my phone was blowing up with furious, screaming texts from my entire extended family. My sister, Clara, is a lovely person, really, but she has always had this deeply ingrained flaw. She fundamentally believes that all the resources, time, and attention of her family are entirely subordinate to her needs, specifically the needs of her children, Leo, who is 8, and Maya, who is 5. They're sweet kids, full of energy, but they are a lot of work. And Clara and her husband Ben treat any offer of help not as a kind gesture, but as their absolute right. I, on the other hand, am Amelia. I'm 34, work remotely as a freelance graphic designer, and cherish my peace and quiet. My apartment is my sanctuary. It's immaculate, minimal, and generally silent, which is exactly how I need it to be to focus on client work that pays the bills. My only pet is a very judgmental indoor cat named Winston, who is allergic to chaos. For context, I live a good hour and a half away from Clara and Ben, in a completely different city, and that distance has always been my self-imposed, necessary boundary. The call came a couple of weeks ago, on a Tuesday morning. I was in the middle of a tight deadline for a big tech client, the kind of project where an extra 2 hours of distraction could genuinely cost me thousands of dollars. Clara called, not texted, which was the first red flag. "Hey, Amy," she chirped, almost too brightly. "How are you? Listen, Ben and I are trying to pull off a surprise long weekend getaway for his parents' anniversary. You know, just a quick trip to the coast, 4 nights, starting Friday. And we were wondering if you could take the kids." I remember physically pausing my work, the mouse hovering over the screen. 4 nights, an hour and a half away, on a work week. I took a deep breath. "Clara, that sounds lovely for you guys, but I can't," I said gently, trying to keep the refusal firm but kind. "I'm swamped right now. I have 3 big projects all due next week, and I'm literally glued to my desk. I can't take 4 consecutive days off work, and my apartment isn't exactly kid-proof, you know. Plus, I'm an hour and a half away from their school. I'm just not set up for it." And that's where the entitlement kicked in, instant and sharp. "Oh, come on, Amy. It's not a big deal," she scoffed. "You work from home, what's the difference? They can just sit quietly and watch movies. Your family, who else are we supposed to ask? They're your niece and nephew. This is the only time we can go, and we already booked the hotel. You have to do this for us." The language shifted instantly from wondering to have to. I reiterated my position, trying to be more explicit. "Clara, I love them, but I said no. I cannot take 4 days off work for last-minute babysitting. It's not a matter of don't want to, it's can't afford to." I suggested she ask her mother-in-law, or hire a sitter, or even take a shorter trip. I offered to chip in for a professional nanny, a very generous offer, considering I'm an independent contractor myself, but she just got cold. "Fine. Amelia," she said, her voice dripping with martyr-like disappointment, "I guess we'll just have to cancel the whole trip then. Thanks for nothing." I thought family was supposed to help each other out. Then she hung up before I could respond. The conversation left me feeling physically drained, but also resolute. I had stated my boundary, and I was holding it. I blocked out the interaction and went back to my 12-hour workday, figuring she had found another solution, or, better yet, accepted my offer to pay for a professional. I thought that was the end of it. Friday rolled around. I was deep in the zone, listening to instrumental music, headphones on, finalizing a complex animation. It was 4:15 p.m., and I was about 2 hours away from emailing the final files and collapsing for the weekend. Suddenly, my building's lobby intercom buzzed, startling me out of my concentration. I picked it up, expecting it to be a delivery person. Yes, a scratchy, unfamiliar male voice came through the speaker. "Yeah, I've got 2 kids and a load of luggage down here for an Amelia." Said they were dropped off. "Are you Amelia?" My stomach dropped like a stone. "Wait, what? Who is this?" "Who dropped them off?" I asked, my voice rising in disbelief. "I'm the taxi driver, lady. Your sister, Clara, paid me up front to bring them here. Said you were expecting them. They're standing outside with 3 huge suitcases and 2 backpacks. I gotta go, so you need to come get them." My blood ran cold. She hadn't just ignored my no. She had outright lied to the taxi driver, packaged her children, and shipped them an hour and a half away like oversized Amazon deliveries, assuming my family obligation would automatically override my job, my boundaries, and my explicit refusal. I sprinted down the stairs, heart pounding with a mixture of rage and panic. Standing on the curb next to a black taxi were Leo and Maya. They looked tired and bewildered. Leo, the older one, was clutching a backpack, and Maya was hugging a stuffed rabbit, looking utterly lost. The taxi driver, a kindly looking older man, was clearly frustrated, leaning against the open trunk, waiting for me to take the immense pile of luggage. He looked relieved to see me. "Finally, all paid for," he said, waving a hand at the kids. They were very quiet the whole way. "Have a good one." And then, before I could process what was happening or even speak a full sentence to the man, he was back in his car, closing the door and pulling away from the curb, leaving me standing there on a Friday afternoon with my sisters, 2 children, and enough luggage for a transatlantic flight, all deposited on the sidewalk in front of my high-security apartment building. I knelt down, trying to keep my voice calm for the kids, though internally I was screaming, "Hey, guys, what are you doing here? Where's Mom and Dad?" Leo looked up at me, his eyes wide. "Mommy and Daddy said they had a surprise vacation and that we were having a fun sleepover with you. They said you couldn't come to our house, so we had to come to yours. They said you were super excited to see us." Maya just kept hugging her rabbit and looking around at the busy street, her lower lip starting to tremble. The sheer, deliberate manipulation of the situation, the calculated use of the children as emotional leverage, hit me like a physical blow. Clara had not just crossed a boundary, she had nuked it from orbit. She had put her own children, my niece and nephew, into a car for a 90-minute ride with a stranger based on a lie, purely to force my hand. It was the most disrespectful, entitled, and frankly dangerous thing she had ever done. I stood up, pulling out my phone. It was too late to call her. She and Ben were likely already halfway to the coast. Their phones strategically switched off or set to silent, so I couldn't reach them. The kids were standing there, their faces full of confused anticipation, and in that moment I realized I had a choice. The path of least resistance was to swallow my anger, bring them upstairs, cancel my client work, spend the next 4 days caring for them, and then have a massive fight with Clara when she got back. That was the path of the good sister, the accommodating aunt, the one who lets themselves be walked over to keep peace. But I realized with a sudden, icy clarity that if I did that, she would do it again and again. I would have forever established that my no meant nothing, that she could always resort to extreme measures and win. I would have trained her to disrespect my life and my career. This wasn't about the kids. This was about my sister's breathtaking entitlement, and I knew I had to push back. Hard, so that's the situation I was in. 2 small, innocent faces looking up at me, 3 suitcases full of their clothes, and a sister who had deliberately abandoned them on my doorstep using a lie. Also, she could enjoy a consequence-free vacation. The moment the taxi pulled away, I had maybe 3 minutes to decide what to do before they started to cry or get restless. I had no supplies them no food, no proper bedding, and no time, thanks to my looming professional commitments. I was genuinely trapped by her malice. ***, before I tell you what I did next, I want you to pause right here and comment below. Seriously, what would ***you have done in my shoes? Would you have taken them in and let her win, or would you have fought back, knowing the absolute family war you were about to start? Let me know, because this is where the story gets really dramatic. ***, I took a deep breath, and I made a decision that was, without a doubt, the most controversial choice of my life. It was a cold decision, a calculating one, but I maintain it was the only way to enforce a boundary that had been criminally violated. I took a few steps back into the street, pulled out my phone, and immediately called the same taxi company back. I requested a taxi immediately, saying I needed it to transport my luggage and 2 small passengers back to the address they had just come from. While I waited, I didn't let the kids inside. I knelt down again and kept my voice calm, but very firm. Leo, Maya, listen to Auntie Amy. Mommy and Daddy made a big mistake. They told you they were having a sleepover with me, but they forgot something very important. They forgot to give me the note that tells me where I need to take you for the real surprise. I need to take you back home so we can find the note, and then you can have your surprise. Leo, bless his heart, bought it. He's 8, and the word surprise is a powerful magic spell. Maya was starting to look upset, so I handed her a juice box I happened to have in my bag and told her it was travel juice for the special journey. The second taxi arrived just a few short minutes later. I calmly, efficiently, loaded all 3 massive suitcases and the 2 backpacks back into the trunk, placed the children securely in the back seat, and gave the driver Clara's home address. Then I pulled out my credit card and prepaid the entire fare for the return trip. I handed the driver a $50 bill, not as a tip, but as an explicit, necessary instruction. Listen to me very carefully. I said, looking him straight in the eye, this is prepaid. You are to drive them to this address. If anyone answers, you hand them the children and the bags. If no one answers, you are to call the non-emergency police line. Report 2 unattended children at the address, and wait with them until an officer arrives. Do not leave them unattended. Do you understand? He looked shocked, but the cash and the seriousness in my voice made him nod immediately. He repeated the instructions back to me, confirmed he understood the police requirement, and I closed the door as the second taxi pulled away, heading back to the city it had just come from. I watched until it was out of sight. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I just felt a strange, cold sense of finality. The boundary was set. The war had begun. I then immediately switched my phone to airplane mode, returned to my silent apartment, and spent the next 3 hours finishing my client project, operating on pure adrenaline-fueled professionalism. I sent the final files, received the client's approval, and then I turned my phone back on. The sheer volume of notifications that exploded onto my screen almost melted the device. The drama had already peaked. What had happened, I later pieced together from a frantic series of voicemails and texts, was that the second taxi arrived at Clara and Ben's house about an hour and a half after leaving mine. Of course, no one was home. They were halfway to their seaside retreat. The taxi driver, following my explicit instructions, called the local police department. An officer was dispatched to the address. The police officer, confronted with 2 small, bewildered children and a story about a taxi, a surprise, and an absent mother, did exactly what they are trained to do. They attempted to contact the parents, and when they couldn't reach Clara or Ben, they called the emergency contact listed on the children's school documents. Emergency contact, it turned out, was my mother, who lived 10 minutes away from Clara. My mother was completely blindsided, believing the kids were safely with me. She rushed over, collected the children from the very confused officer, and immediately started calling me. The texts and voicemails were a spectacle of fury and disbelief. My mother's messages were a mix of worried relief that the kids were safe, but utter confusion and fear that I had done something so drastic. Clara's texts, which started once the police had finally managed to track her down via her license plate on highway, were pure incandescent rage. She called me every name under the sun: cruel, heartless, an unfit aunt, a monster who abandoned her own flesh and blood on the street. Ben's texts were more controlled, but just as furious, calling my actions irresponsible and claiming I had traumatized the children by making them believe they were lost. My entire family was involved, having been looped in by Clara's dramatic, one-sided version of the story. Asterisk, Amelia threw my kids out of a taxi and called the police on them. Asterisk, Clara and Ben's surprise getaway, naturally, ended abruptly. They had to turn around 2 hours into their trip, drive all the way back, and face my mother's stern judgment and the quiet, unsettling presence of a police report. When they finally arrived home late that night, tired, angry, and out a considerable amount of money, my mother was waiting for them, and she was furious, not at me, but at Clara for the deception and the risk she had taken. The fact that the police were involved was the ultimate, undeniable proof of Clara's reckless behavior and my need to draw a firm, visible line. The aftermath was brutal. For a full month, I was completely ostracized by Clara, Ben, and a few of my aunts and cousins who took her side, arguing that no matter the circumstances, family comes first, and children should never be put into an uncertain situation. They argued that my response was disproportionate, mean, and unnecessarily dramatic. But my mother, after initially being confused, ended up being my strongest defender. She saw the full picture: Clara's entitlement, the lie, and the dangerous act of shipping her children off without consent. You should have told her no, Clara. My mother reportedly told my sister. But you should never have put those kids in a cab alone based on a lie. Amelia set a boundary, and you tried to break it by force. She had to show you the consequences. I sent a single, simple text to Clara about a week later, after all the dust had settled. It was the only thing I needed to say, and it solidified my position. It read, asterisk, your entitlement does not negate my livelihood. My no is final. Next time you try to ignore my boundaries, the consequences will be even more public. The police report is now part of the record. Asterisk, the silence that followed was deafening, and I finally got what I wanted: peace, respect, and a sister who learned, through the most dramatic means possible, that my time, my work, and my autonomy were not up for negotiation. The moral of the story, I suppose, is that sometimes being the villain in someone else's narrative is the only way to be the hero in your own. The emotional cost was high, the family drama was a wildfire, and I had to deal with the guilt of momentarily confusing my niece and nephew. But I prevented a lifetime of being manipulated and used. My sanctuary is once again silent. My work is thriving, and Clara now asks for help a full month in advance and offers to pay for every single hour of my time, which I still usually decline, but the difference is, she asks respectfully. She hasn't mentioned a surprise trip or an unexpected drop-off since. So tell me, when I saw my sister's kids dumped on my doorstep by a stranger she had lied to, knowing she was already halfway to the coast, was I wrong to take the extreme measure of sending them right back and letting the proper authorities get involved? Was I cruel, or was I just a person finally demanding basic respect for her life? Like this video if you were on my side and think Clara got exactly what she deserved. Subscribe for more shocking stories about family.